For more insight into how African leaders addressed crisis in 2022, I'm joined live via Skype from Nairobi, Kenya by Mausi Segun, Africa Director at Human Rights Watch. Mausi, welcome to Africa 54.
Hi, Stella. Thanks for having me.
Mausi, tell us which countries of Africa topped your list of human rights abusers in the continent and why?
Well, in Africa, it's difficult to point at just one or two or even a few countries. What we have tried to do with our report, with our annual report, is to shine the light on where we have seen serious cases of human rights abuses occur. And I would say that, our analysis shows that the trend is that where you have situations of conflict, armed conflict, communal violence, and social unrest, the opportunities for gross violations of human rights increase. So you look at, regions, it's not just one country, regions like the Sahel and in West Africa with Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, where we've seen horrible killings of ordinary people by non-state armed groups. We have seen the enforced disappearances of so-called suspects by government forces, harassing community members, local people, villagers, in the claim that they are harboring insurgents by government forces. We have seen the torture and the massacre of hundreds of men, young men, old men, people of all ages. We have seen the gross violations of rights of women and girls targeted as collateral and weapons of war by one side and against the other. The rape, the sexual violence that continues to occur. From West Africa, we can also look at northern Ethiopia, the Tigray region, but also elsewhere in that country. But if we move slightly outside of the regions where we have conflict, I would say, I think hands down, the countries where the opportunity for independent scrutiny of human rights conditions would be the top of our list. And, amongst those few countries, I would place Eritrea. Eritrea is one of the most difficult countries to access, to monitor, to document human rights, and to hold anyone, including the president, accountable.
Mausi, but who holds these government authorities responsible for what they do? I know you mentioned some insurgents, committing atrocities against civilians, but who should hold the authorities responsible for what some of these countries have done to its own citizenry?
So, for one, there are local laws that prescribe what the sanctions should be for anyone implicated in the abuse of human rights. And so we can say authorities in general, but there are certain individuals. So part of what we do in partnership with our other groups, including those at national and domestic levels, is to identify the individual officers and those who have command responsibility for those who carry out the abuses. Hold individuals to account, because when we put a blanket label of authorities or institution, it's easy for individuals to escape with any kind of scrutiny. So what we do is to focus on who carried out the act, who gave the order, and who is responsible and has command and control over those forces, whether those are government forces or non-state actors. Non-state actors also have some form of organization and hierarchy, and to hold those individuals to account, as we've done in a number of cases, including with Darfur, where we're beginning to see the International Criminal Court open cases at least against one of those who have been indicted for crimes against civilians in that context. And we're seeing it elsewhere as well. That's key. The other key is documentation is critical. Documentation of the abuses, documentation by local groups, by individuals, those witnesses, the victims, ensuring that there is a record and that authorities cannot claim they do not have knowledge of the abuses. And then you have mechanisms like the African Union human rights mechanisms, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. You have international institutions. I've mentioned the International Criminal Court, but there is also the United Nations Security Council, as well as the Human Rights Council in Geneva.
All right. Thank you so much, Mausi, for your insight.